Hello and welcome back, everyone, to the Double Dip Draft Season 4. We're in Week 3's analysis of some very interesting matches. I'm one of your hosts, Cabral095, and joining me is...
the other host, Spood, coach of the Southtown Sand Slashers. Thank you.
Yes, and I am the coach of the Hashlingy Age Slashers.
That's right. We're both slashers. We're just a couple of slashing guys.
Oh, man, it's fun dicing and cutting up the competition, am I right?
Swords and spatulas and things.
We had some interesting matches I think are really kind of teetering points for this division. Some of them, not all of them. Like one or two of them I feel like kind of are making some interesting impacts in Division 1.
Yeah, so this is Week 3 of Division 1, and as of Week 3, so when we're recording this, we're already into Week 4, or rather we've already seen the results for Week 4, which we might refer to on and off, but at this moment in time, as of Week 3, you start to kind of see the landscape of the season change, right? Like Week 1 and Week 2, you can kind of throw those weeks away if you have to. Like, okay, maybe I went down 0-2, I can still come back. Weeks 3 and 4 are kind of the middle of the season, and that's when you need to start realizing, like, okay, my path to playoffs relies on me beating, such and such person and not losing to such and such other person.
Yeah, this is definitely the week, as well as, of course, Week 4, where we really start to see what teams are probably going to make playoffs at that point as well. We really start getting an idea of the competition layout for that.
Right. It's intense. I mean, this Week 3,
yeah.
Division 1, as of Week 3, looks lopsided. Basically, you'll notice as we go through the different matches for this week, you'll start to feel like, interesting. But we have, as of Week 3, there are 3 people sitting at 3-0, and 3 people sitting at 0-3, and then we have 2 other teams at 2-1 and 1-2 respectively. So there is kind of a big gap between the top 3 and the bottom 3 in that division.
Man, this entire bracket's just perfectly balanced.
Yeah, it's insane. It's honestly kind of a slobber knocker. Why don't you tell us about the first match we get to watch?
Yes, the first match we're going to be watching is GTB Woody of the Schaumburg Salamences versus Scoot33 of Dumblespoods Army. It's a pretty interesting matchup we got here, actually.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and start playing it so that the people can see it. We'll just kind of talk about it. Feel free to play it on your own, and we'll...
Yeah, I'm playing on my own end right now.
Yeah, so basically, Woody's team is always interesting to watch because he has what I think is a deceptively good draft. Like, it kind of looks weird if you don't look hard enough at it, like double weather. Yeah. But he kind of does, it makes you have to really think, and he does kind of adapt it to the weeks fairly well. You really see it with Scoots. And I mean, him versus IDM, he only lost by 2 Pokemon. Him versus Scoots, he only lost by 2 Pokemon. Woody's insane. I mean, he's really like grinding. It's unfortunate for him that he has to fight so many like top seeded players early. Because it actually makes his differential and stuff look a lot worse than it actually maybe should in terms of like reflecting how well he's doing this season.
Definitely. GTB Woody's been putting a lot of work in a lot of his matches, I feel like. Like, there's a lot of footwork put in place. He doesn't, like, handily lose these matches. It's a tough battle to get where, these battles are ending up with the results. That was a great use of words there. Good job, Frank.
Hey, you killed it.
By the way, earlier with the Zoomerl, he could have definitely belly drummed, I believe.
Yeah, I am going to pause and run it back to that so I can kind of demonstrate, because Scoots gets a little bit greedy on a Zoomerl. He's got his Rhyperior in. He's thinking, okay, I've got Solid Rock, I've got Sun Up, so I'm not going to be taking that much damage. I mean, raw Aqua Jet does like 25. If Woody had belly drummed there instead of Aqua Jetting when Rhyperior put up Stealth Rocks,
yeah,
I don't want to say that he would have just won the game, but he would have started taking Pokemon. I mean, I don't even know if... I don't know. I guess it just depends on like how fast Feeny was, if it was like speed invested or not. But yeah, certainly would have killed Rhyperior, and the game could have looked a lot different if he had just belly drummed raw.
Because the Stealth Rocks do a lot of damage later on in the match, especially against Charizard and other Pokemon as they come out.
Yeah, that's true as well. Yeah, Charizard is not running boots this week. I'm not really sure why not. I imagine there was some kind of set, maybe like Life Orb or something, maybe Charcoal. I don't know.
Maybe.
But yeah, it's, for Scoots, it was like a kind of scary match. And it's actually, believe it or not, going in versus Woody's Camparaja Hippowdon core, it's kind of hard to break, especially right there. You saw Scoots lost his Leafeon. That could have helped a bit more against Hippowdon. Woody makes some pretty bad misplays against this Pangoro, which otherwise he would have done pretty well. Actually, I'll point it out when we get there, because it's,
Yeah.
So
I'm not
Noivern,
too sure why Scoots brought Leafeon, by the way. Do you have any idea what that? Or
I don't know. Maybe like some sun cheese. Like maybe he was trying to pull off some synthesis stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, I actually want to point this out. So, Hippowdon comes in, 1v1's Pangoro. Pangoro's drain punching, he's getting his health back. But Rocky Helmet Life Orb is really whittling Pangoro down a bit. Oh, that's my cat. Here's what I want to talk about. Noivern comes out, right? Is sitting on Pangoro. A Hurricane, it outspeeds it. Hurricane absolutely kills.
Yes.
And Pangoro's at like 27, so I understand the rationale of wanting to hit a U-turn, but it's only neutral damage, non-stab, physical when you're like a special attacker. He gets just a smidge too greedy, and he goes for a U-turn to try and keep up some momentum for later. And he does not kill the Pangoro.
No, probably would have been worth it just using a slightly stronger move just to kill the Pangoro, because this Pangoro has been doing a ton of work for Scoots as it is. Because
what ends up happening is then Pangoro drain punches, gets a bunch of health back. It ends up killing Noivern. He ends up having Copperajah take unnecessary rocks damage. Ninetales ends up taking unnecessary rocks damage. He burns the Pangoro instead of just killing it, which lets it drain punch for like half of Ninetales' health. And then it still doesn't die?
Yeah,
he let Scoots get away with so much with that Pangoro, and he could have just killed it 4 turns ago and saved a lot of health on a lot of Pokemon. And unfortunately, like that opening alone kind of just opened up Glastrier in Trick Room to just come in and sweep.
It really did. And I feel like taking out Pangoro would have been really ideal, because again, he still would have had Noivern as well as just Noivern, huh?
Well, he would have had Noivern, and he would have had like a lot more health on his Ninetales.
Yep.
Which would have been nice for like, I don't know. It would have been nice to have it for maybe Feeny in an endgame situation where you've got like your sun up and you can spam Solar Beam.
Yeah, definitely.
And even then, given like the frankly pretty awful misplay with the Pangoro, he still puts it in a situation where like high horsepower. I mean, it's not a fully accurate move. Glastrier could, in theory, miss, and I think if Glastrier had missed any of these high horsepowers, he probably would have just lost.
Yeah, definitely. And the Charger comes in taking half health from rocks and just gets wiped out, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's a +2. It doesn't really, he maybe could have forced like an Icicle Crash, which is even less accurate if he had full HP, but yeah, I mean, if he just hadn't let the rocks get set up, right? If he had just like belly drummed on a Zoomerwheel or maybe hit Liquidation, you could have seen a different game. If he had just hurricaned the Pangoro instead of you turning out on it, you could have seen a very different game. Like, Woody, he's just like on the brink of doing good stuff, and he just like fails to clinch it, and it's frustrating to watch, But I don't know. There's not too much else I wanted to say about that. Did you have any questions? Did you have any input?
No, I didn't really have too much. Just a really entertaining match as well. Honestly, it's a 24-turn match. I thought it was just pretty engaging overall throughout. Sure, we have some misplays here and there, but Scoots is definitely one of the better players as well to point out, and GTP would have put in some good work against Scoots.
Yeah, Scoots held it together. I'm interested. It's cool to see the Trick Room Glastrier sweep as opposed to like he usually brings Spectrier instead.
Yeah.
And I think Trick Room Glastrier is really good, but if I remember correctly, Woody's draft isn't even that fast. So I'm kind of interested in... I mean, I guess like Glastrier is pretty slow anyway, so even like against a mid-speed draft, you could benefit from Trick Room, but I don't know. It's just interesting to see. I wonder if there was a reason beyond just wanting to use Glastrier that he brought it over Spectrier.
Yeah, definitely. And this bumps up Scoots as of week 3 into second place actually in Division 1.
Yeah, looks quite strong. I mean, week 3, him, Claire, and IDM were all undefeated, I believe. So, and sorry, spoilers. I know those are the matches we still got to talk about, but
yeah.
On that note, why don't we just go ahead and pivot on over to our next match, which was Kenneth versus IDM. Kenneth, of course, being the coach of the Neerdowell Nidokings. IDM, of course, being the coach of the Brussels Espeons.
Of course.
I don't remember if you actually said the team names for Woody and
I did.
and Scoots.
I
did
did.
you? Yeah.
I did my part.
Nice.
You've done your part, of course.
Look at that. We're together. We are stronger, right? We can do it. You know the picture of the lady with the hand, like the arm.
Yeah, the picture of the lady. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, good
That's what
times.
they
All
call it.
right, so
Yeah, this one was really intense, actually. So this was one that Kenneth wanted a lot. And again, getting an IDM victory, it's esteemed. I mean, it's a difficult thing to pull off, especially with a draft as threatening as IDM has.
definitely.
And you get to see some cool stuff. I mean, this is a very methodical, kind of slow, defensive into late game. Like, it's kind of... On one hand, it's almost like a textbook example of, like, you know, you should study this if you want to learn how to be a Pokemon player, like understanding these segments of the game as they develop, versus it's also completely just wackadoo because they both run some weird cool shit that you wouldn't necessarily expect to see. So I'll go ahead and start the replay and we can watch it and kind of explore. Machamp is really bulky. That's something that I learned this season, is that Machamp just takes hits all day.
He also dishes out hits too. Yeah, he doesn't have a lot of special, of course. Anything, especially what is it?
Special
Blessed.
attack? Or like special invested?
Especially blessed. I'm gonna call it.
Especially blessed, sure.
Yeah, anything especially blessed could really take out a Machamp, though. But that freeze, my goodness, by the way.
Well, okay, so Machamp he kind of like shorts up his special defense. Like sometimes you'll see like a no guard with assault vest instead of like guts with flame orb. But I actually want to point out a couple turns. I'm going to actually literally just back up because there's a lot to dissect in this match. We're probably going to spend a bit of time on it. So immediately Kenneth goes for a pretty free knockoff, right? He knows that Cobalion's not going to stay in. And then he stays in on the Whimsicott, not even scared of the Moonblast, which is a very aggressive play. And he clicks Ice Punch and then immediately gets a freeze on the Jellicent, which is huge. This Jellicent actually proves to be a big pain in his ass later. And he manages to just, like, oppress it really early on with some good fortune. He then goes for a questionable Brick Break. I think he was going, like, too nuts, to be honest, at that point.
Yeah, I think he was trying to predict something else coming out there. But
he was probably predicting Cobalion. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
Like, Cobalion maybe... I don't know. Maybe Whimsicott?
Maybe?
Beats me. I mean, he probably would have clicked another Ice Punch if he was expecting Whimsicott, but it kind of... Whatever. Maybe Grimmsnarl. Grimmsnarl would do neutral.
Maybe. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but this Jellicent stays frozen for like 4 or 5 turns. By the way.
It stays frozen for a good minute.
Yeah, and I think that really put a good hold on like IDM from doing any significant damage to Kenneth's team.
Well, I think this is the right approach if you're fighting IDM generally, is like, you need to just have a really aggressive early game, or you kind of can get stuffed out, especially versus a draft like the one that IDM has, where it's very much a game of I whittle you down, I status your Pokemon to set up for like 1, maybe 2 sweepers. And it's actually even harder for IDM in this matchup because Kenneth has Hail, right? He's got Slush Rush Abuse with Alolan Sandslash, and he's also got Ditto. Now, Kenneth didn't bring Ditto, but Ditto disincentivizes setup sweeping really hard, because if someone setup sweeps you, you can just send in Ditto with a Scarf, take their setup, and then be faster than them anyway, and then you could reverse sweep their team with the Ditto.
Yeah.
Which IDM was definitely scared of. You'll have noticed if you watch the last 2 weeks' analyses that IDM would run dual screen weakness policy, Dragon Dance, Dragonite, and that would just get crushed by a Ditto. Like, that would be rough. So he ended up essentially just putting the pressure on IDM from team building to just not do that. And it does pay some dividends, but, you know, like, Kevin knows he's got to play really aggressive, he's got to click buttons. That knockoff on the Jellicent, the Colberberry, was very, very smart from IDM. That saved his bacon right there.
Read.
Yeah. Very smart.
That's what both of these players are doing. I feel like a really good job at reading what the other person's doing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of plays that both are making that I think are really good. It's just a matter of, you know, what comes out of one of the others sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of interesting turns that are very pivotal, like some good fortune and some just fuckery, you know?
Yeah.
This Cobalion, the Brick Break is tough to deal with. He maybe could have gone like raw into Lele, but he's essentially like, I understand the rationale for Kemet there. Like, even though Cobalion has already revealed Brick Break, he wants to keep spamming Aurora Veil, because if he risks, you know, switching out into Lele and eating like an Iron Head, which he does not want to take damage on Lele, since that's kind of like Lele plus Alakazam is his endgame sweep. Just given what IDM's team looks like Alolan Sandslash doesn't do quite as well. Although I love the rapid spin on the Cobalion.
Yeah.
He gets some mileage off of that. He just kills it. I mean, he could have just killed it raw, but it gives him the advantage over, I guess, something else coming in. Also, I love the Alakazam Encore. They're just both showing off all their cards. This Alakazam Encores Jellicent into spamming Strength Sap so that he knows he has to force IDM to switch here. And he just gets a hit. But here's the problem. So Kemeth has a cool heat thing that he does, where he runs Alakazam with Encore. He forces a switch off from Jellicent. He's got an opportunity to become aggressive. He hits a knockoff to Gimp whatever comes in. Grimmsnarl comes in. Now, Grimmsnarl is a Pokemon that 10 out of 10 times is going to be running Prankster. But it does have another ability in Pickpocket. Now, Pickpocket is, if my understanding of Pickpocket is correct, if you don't have a held item and you have Pickpocket as your ability, and there is a contact move that is made with you, you take your opponent's held item, like the move Thief would.
That's
he
a big brain play
yoinks. Right, yeah, he literally takes the Focus Sash off of Alakazam, allowing him to kill it.
They even had a little interaction, by the way, here, where IDM says, Spoon actually dared me to use Pickpocket Grimmsnarl in one match. I had to do it.
I did. I didn't think he would do it. I told him, like, you're going to run Prankster, dude. Come on. Insanity. Also, this Excelgor was a really cool idea, but even with the +1 special defense, it just did not stand a chance. He was trying to pop Psychic Seed Unburden so that he could just sort of get a cheeky little reverse sweep, and Unburden on Excelgor is going to outrun your Slush Rush like Arctozolt or Alolan Sandslash. Like, that, even that is just, it pales in comparison to an Excelgor with doubled speed.
Mm-hmm.
But it ends up just not panning out because Excelgor is quite frail. And at this point, I mean, Kemeth is looking really, really strong. But IDM has something up his sleeve. I mean, you even see, like, this Lele stays in on the Jellicent. Lives the Shadow Ball with a couple health. He gets a bit with Grassy Terrain. Kills with Energy Ball in response. Where did Grassy Terrain even come from?
I was trying to figure that out.
Whimsicott used it. Okay, Whimsicott manually set up Grassy Terrain, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was to pop... Oh, no, because it was Psychic Seed. So he was, like, running counter terrain, and then also he was running Psychic Seed to abuse Kemeth's terrain. So this is some really custom, like, homebrew stuff from IDM.
Definitely. And right after the Jellicent was taken out, Kemeth was looking really good for the match. Until Silvally comes out, of course, and just wrecks. Yeah.
So if you're not familiar with Silvally, I mean, we've talked about it a bit in the previous analysis videos, but Silvally can come as one of any type. It's basically, its gimmick is that it has a set of held items that are exclusive to it, similar to Arceus, where if you're running the appropriate type memory, then that's what type your Silvally becomes. So Silvally is really, really hard to prep for because you're not necessarily going to know what type Silvally will be on arrival. And this Silvally ends up being Silvally Ghost. And IDM did a very clever thing to get around the Ditto reverse sweep by using Tailwind instead of Flame Charge. Normally, a Silvally sweep would entail it using the move Flame Charge, which raises its speed by 1. It's just a physical fire-type move. It's very, it's just like a nice thing to hit and to just get your speed up. Kind of similar to Rapid Spin, except it actually does damage. But Silvally uses Tailwind instead, which doubles his team's speed, like flat. Which means that if Ditto were to come in and try to scarf outspeed Silvally, it would not only not outspeed, it wouldn't get the Tailwind bonus either. So this Silvally is Ditto-proof at this point. And IDM recognizes that he's actually, if he just sets up a Swords Dance Tailwind, then he can run through the rest of this team.
Both of the players in this match did really well, and this is a really entertaining match. And it's something where I feel like a lot of newcomers like myself can watch this match and kind of take some notes. Sure, there's a few things I'll go over your heads, but it's a really good example of two really good players. Like,
Yeah.
they knew how to read, they knew what to bring, they knew what to do. A really good match and a close one, because this doesn't send IDM really high on the list, but this match he ends up in third underneath Scoots and Claire. And this is one where we'll see later on the next recap how this starts to pan out with IDM. But it's just really interesting how close this match was, and not giving IDM that really big victory like we're used to seeing with some other matches IDM has had.
Yeah, this was a treat, even though Kenneth lost. I was kind of saying in the previous analysis videos, like, I'm excited to see Kenneth kind of make a stand and really show, like, where he's getting these wins. Like, I wanted to see him dig deep and pull off something that looked really good, because, he got his last 2 wins, but definitely versus Mass, it was a sloppy, like, tight endgame. Here versus IDM, even though he lost, this was just brains. I can't even, like, a lot of this, my play-by-play analysis might even be missing some of the finer points of the team building or the execution from both of them, but, like, Kenneth was prepared for IDM was prepared for Kenneth. There was some semi-important luck, like, early and late, certainly with the Jellicent made it easier for Kenneth, but Encore into Pickpocket into, like, all this crazy stuff. It was a treat to watch. I loved Kenneth versus IDM.
Great match. Probably the match of the week, actually.
Certainly, I would say so. It was an absolute delight to watch. But I don't know. If we spend, like, too much more time on this, then I think I would just, like, my head would explode from how smart the players are. So I think you might need to football us over into the next replay.
Definitely. Let's go ahead and move on to that then. Our next match is going to be Claire of the Maryland Manectrics versus Imitable Mass of the Minneapolis Magnezones. And
a lot of M's in this one.
A lot of M's, a lot of oohs in this match as well.
A lot of M's, and certainly at least one big L. Imitable Mass.
Oh,
yeah.
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 But, as the season's gone on, I think he's starting to pick things up. I think he's starting to get it here and there. Sure, there's misplays and things, but I think he's slowly getting it. I think he's starting to see what goes in there. And I know he's working with good people to help him on his team as well. But it's his first season. It's my first season as well. So,
it's a hard game. You can vouch.
It is.
You have to think a lot.
It's definitely something where, first off, Mass isn't someone who really even played Pokemon in the first place either. Too much. Like,
he's like casually into Pokemon.
Yeah,
he was
like
big into Mystery
like,
Dungeon was his thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So he's kind of like me. Like, I played Pokemon casually. Never played to this degree. And it's something where I have to really, like, sink my teeth in and figure out what's what, because I really wasn't into, like, Sun and Moon, and then, like, Sword and Shield, I never really got into too much. So I'm learning a bunch of new Pokemon, a bunch of new abilities and attacks and things. And I'm like, this is the thing?
Right, like, what is that?
Yeah, because a lot has changed, because, me being an old person now, I'm used to what was available in, like, Gen 2 and 3 and even 4 and what was available with that stuff. And there's so much that's new and different. And the way there's something with this when you manipulate Pokemon to a way with certain items and abilities and other Pokemon to complement them, that's very different than, like, this one's my favorite, I use it.
It is a steep and brutal learning curve for sure.
Definitely.
And, that's why I gotta get on my hands and knees and, like, beg people who are new to stay. Like, please, I know it sucks to lose a lot, but...
And it's something where I think it's really helped with this season. There's quite a few new people in this new season, myself included, Mass included. We have a couple other people, I think it's their first seasons as well,
it's Claire's first season of Double Dip, it's Remedy's first season of Double Dip, Phantom Knight's first season. There's a lot of people who either hadn't played at all or hadn't played in this specific league before, so... The roster definitely shook up a lot between seasons 3 and 4.
And it looks quite shaken up looking at the scoreboards over here on the side I have right here.
Yeah, tell me about it. Claire, and I know we're talking a lot before we even get into the match, but I think this one kind of deserves a lot of perspective, because Mass is really, he's out here grinding for his first win. Like, we're at a point where it's very likely that he's not going to be landing playoffs in this division just because of how stacked the top half is.
Yes.
So he's really, like, he's working hard. He really wants to get his one win. And Claire, when she came in, she said, okay, I haven't played since like Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire meta. I don't really know what's going on that well. I don't expect to do that good. Claire came in and just spanked. I mean, Claire's doing amazing so far. And so
Yeah,
Claire versus
3-0,
Mass.
doing really good with the +9 differential in first.
In first. Yep.
In first in Division 1. Fantastic. What a comeback from like, I haven't played since here.
Right.
And just come and wipe the floor with everyone.
Yeah, really.
But yeah, what an insane season. Shall we get started and watch
Yeah,
it?
let's go ahead and watch it, because basically just Claire wants this win to kind of establish herself, like, okay, I'm hotly in contention for the top of this division. And Mass, he, it's like winnable, if he like pulls off just enough funny, zany stuff that he can hit. And I'll tell you what, we put together this Gigalith together, and this Gigalith is Sand Force instead of Sandstream, because Claire's team is also a sand team, so you might as well just benefit from sand instead of setting it up for your opponent. Roserade's a good, relatively good counter for Rotom Wash, but he kind of switches it in hard, a lot, and that's kind of, I think, Mass's like big foible, or like kind of his worst habit, is he does a lot of switching into things just hard. He doesn't do a lot of pivoting. He doesn't do a lot of sacking. He kind of just switches around and takes a lot of damage on a lot of Pokemon.
Yeah, and that's something early on that I've had to start learning and adjusting to as well, is learning and knowing when to switch. And it's difficult. It's something where, you're facing someone that you haven't played before and you don't know how they play Pokemon. It's something where you have to slowly learn and pick up on when to switch and how to switch.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that Mass, will start to learn as the season goes on.
Yeah, not to sound too pretentious or anything.
No,
it's
not
literally
at all.
a game for
I'm
children.
not trying to sound
no,
that way.
I'm not even talking about you. I was about to say something that might sound pretentious.
Okay.
You have to kind of think of it literally like chess. You have to be willing to sacrifice pawns to kill other things, right? You have to identify
also,
which of your Pokemon. It did not miss. Actually, we'll talk about that in a minute because I forgot to write that down in the notes. Yeah, that's Sleep Claws. Basically, yeah, so when you have Pokemon, they all have to have a purpose, right? Like in a 6v6, every Pokemon that dies is important, right? It's a team game. So you need to identify like when your Pokemon have already done the thing that they needed to do and when it's okay to just kind of let them die. Unfortunately, Mass does not do this to a good enough degree to where like his Pokemon, he just takes a ton of chip on all 6 of his Pokemon, which makes them very susceptible to like a late game sweep by something like Comfey, which has priority Draining Kiss and can just click it over and over again, especially since he brought like 2 dragons. And it's tough, it's a hard thing to adjust to, but you really do have to think of it like some of your Pokemon are the queen and some of your Pokemon are the pawns, and you have to sacrifice your pawns to keep your queen healthy. And actually, I did want to touch on, you mentioned the Sleep Powder miss.
Yeah.
That's another example of Mass not being familiar with the mechanics. So, in a normal game of Pokemon, that would have worked. If we were playing on the Nintendo Switch, him clicking that move would have put this Pokemon to sleep. But because we're playing on Pokemon Showdown, under the Smogon rule set, there is a mod on the game. There are a couple of different ones, but specifically this is Sleep Clause, which is essentially a clause implemented in the Smogon rule set, which says that if there is a Pokemon asleep on the enemy team, you cannot put any more of their Pokemon to sleep. There's a lot of kind of degenerate strategies where people like spam Spore over and over again. Like there's tricky things where like Lightbird can like, I don't know, copycat Spore or whatever. Prankster like sleep powders and things. Like if you just spam sleep everything on the opponent's team, then they don't get to play the game. So they added Sleep Clause to the Smogon rule set where you can only have one of your Pokemon asleep at a given time unless you put them to sleep, like with rest. But your opponent can't just spam Spore, or in this case Sleep Powder, on your team. And that is exactly what Mass does. He either forgot about Sleep Clause or didn't know about it in the first place, but at this point, Chandelure he had put to sleep like 10 turns ago or something, like a while ago.
Right.
So he clicks on Sleep Powder again instead of just clicking Leaf Storm on this Excadrill, and it doesn't work. Sleep Clause triggers, and then he gets killed by Earthquake. And he didn't even have to do that. If he had clicked Leaf Storm, it would have killed, and he outsped. So even if he hadn't already put something to sleep, that was just kind of a misclick. But yeah, sleep powder, it doesn't work if you've already got a Pokemon on the opponent team asleep.
Yeah. And he also did let it set up with a Swords Dance as well when he switched out to Salamences instead of keeping in Roserade for another Leaf Storm, as it is.
Yeah, well, that was kind of tricky, right? So
yeah, that is kind of tricky.
Roserade after a Leaf Storm is at -2.
That's right. Yeah,
which means, in that case, the Excadrill certainly would have lived that. So it was actually very much the right decision for Claire to click Swords Dance there. And I kind of do agree with the Salamences play even, because it has Intimidate, so it brings down the Swords Dance from +2 to just a +1. And it can also just click Brick Break. If he had Earthquake, it probably would have been a bit better. But, you know, hindsight's 2020, right? Like, he didn't know what was going to be on her team, and he brought Brick Break, presumably for, like, Klefki screens, which she didn't end up having. But it was tough, man. You know, there were a couple of bad misplays. I feel like, you know, alternate universe Mass maybe could have pulled this back, but it was kind of a slaughter. I mean, Claire showed off that she knew what she was doing, and Mass kind of floundered under the pressure, which is unfortunate because I think he does have like an innate sort of understanding of the strategy, right? Like, I can kind of understand that the cogs are turning in his brain, and he's switching in the right Pokemon generally, but he's just doing it at the wrong times. And he's forgetting a lot of the very, like, fine point minutia of the game that you only really get to know if you play it a lot, or have played it a lot. So you can't even blame him for, you know, trying to sleep something twice.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's something where, like, I really actually didn't know about the sleep clause myself.
Yeah. So that's a thing, you know. It's hard and it's not intuitive. So I love you, Mass. I'm sorry about your loss, Claire. You did great. You know, you don't need me to tell you that you're doing great. If I talked about every time Claire did great in one of these recap videos, it'd be all I ever talked about. Yep. Commanding 5-0, putting her differential above even Scoots and IDM, putting her at number 1 in the division in season 3 or week 3, excuse me. So yeah, that's the match. You know,
that is the match.
Oof. Anyway, why don't we roll it back around and talk about our 4th match, a very interesting one, actually. Firebolt versus Phantom Knight. Firebolt being the coach of the Minnesota Magikarps, Phantom Knight being the coach of the Haunted Mansion Gengars. This was interesting because they were both 0-2. Yeah. So whoever won this was getting their first win. And it ended up being Firebolt.
Yeah, which is going to put Firebolt on an interesting path, and I think really has kind of defined his season. We're going to talk, you know, more about that in like the
in season 4 or week 4. Yeah, week 4 is where you really start to see the victory path come out. But Firebolt needed this win for sure. Being 0-3 would have been tough.
Yeah, 0-3 is really tough, especially considering that this week has made 3 teams 0-3, which leaves us to see what happens with week 4.
Yeah, because you know, you can still claw your way back to victory from 0-3, but it is tough. It is dismal down there. So Firebolt, you know, if you can even just like the difference between 0-3 and 1-2 is insane. Like, I can't even describe like the positional difference that gives you by week 4.
Yeah.
And Firebolt was really gunning for it. And Firebolt, I mean, he had a rough week 1. He lost his match to Claire on a hybrid misplay and bad RNG moment. And then he just lost to... who did he fight week 2? I think it was Scoots, right?
I believe it was Scoots, yeah.
Yeah, and then he just kind of got outplayed by Scoots fair and square. So this week 3 was like him. He needed to be like, okay, I got to shape up. I gotta make sure that I'm not slipping. You know, Phantom Knight is also 0-2. I have a better shot at beating Phantom Knight than I had at beating Claire or Scoots. So I gotta dig deep and just do it. And I'll tell you what, Firebolt certainly dug deep. But he had a ground type that really carried him, is what I mean to say.
Oh, there you go.
I'll go ahead and start
watching?
Yep, I just started. Yikes. Basically, so Phantom Knight... This Primarina, I'm pretty sure it's specced with Substitute, so I have no idea what the hell's going on over there. I don't know. That's not a good thing to do. Good poison. So the poison jab would not have normally 2-hit KO'd. Or maybe it might have on a roll, but getting the poison made it definitely 2-hit KO.
Yeah, definitely really helped there.
Yeah, and Phantom Knight, I mean, the thing is, like, Tornadus has Regenerator, so he could have, like, hard switched it out into, like, Registeel, which probably would have been the better choice because it's, like, a poison immunity, but...
Yeah, definitely sacrificing Espeon there.
Yeah, Espeon's questionable. I think Phantom Knight kind of just, I don't know. He was clicking buttons, but
yeah,
I wish I could even tell you what the rationale was here. Firebolt actually brings in his Boltund like hard on Primarina, and he goes for Psychic Fangs, trying to like read the Electivire switch in, and then dies to Life Orb, and then Primarina doesn't switch out. That's kind of Phantom Knight's thing, is that he doesn't go anywhere. He loves staying in. It is Specs! It revealed Specs Substitute! What are you doing, bro? What are you gonna do when you're behind your sub with Specs? You're just gonna have to keep clicking the Substitute button. Anyway, sorry. That's
no, it's okay. I completely understand what you're saying. Like, why do you
questionable set? Very weird. Yeah, Phantom Knight. Maybe he was trying to bait knockoff on something. I don't know.
Could have been the case, but
that's like such a high concept like approach.
Yeah, because Premier, I feel like could have done a lot for Phantom Knight's team had it not run Specs and Substitute.
Yeah. Also, the Hammer Arm miss looked like it mattered. It didn't really. It did a max of like 39. If Firebolt was HP invested, I believe he was HP defense.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was rough for Phantom Knight. You know, he probably could have done better if he gave like some more thought to his like switch ins. And from the team building angle, it's like, you know, take the Specs off your Primarina. Give it like leftovers if you want it to be like a substitute variant with more longevity, or give it Specs or give it a Life Orb even if you want to run like a hybrid sort of defensive offensive. Like I want to be able to click whatever move I decide is good, but I also want to get a sub up so I can stay in on something that would normally counter me. Tough. It's a tough thing to dissect. And Fireball, I mean, this Swampert just sat on Phantom Knight's team.
Yeah, Swampert's hard to hit. It's a pretty overall compared to like looking at Phantom Knight's team. It looked pretty hard to hit for him with Electivire doing mostly electric moves. It did have Hammer Arm, of course, but it had that miss, and even with hitting,
if
it wasn't a crit, it had to crit to take it out.
Yeah. So it was kind of rough, man. I mean, Phantom Knight kind of just got messed up by this Swampert, but it was good. You know, it was really Firebolt's game to lose, and he managed to not lose it, which is that's good news for Firebolt.
Yeah, and this is the match I think that's really changed his direction for the season. Again, we'll see that in Week 4's analysis.
In Week 4, yeah. Please stay tuned for Week 4 Division 1, because that's
definitely
wild.
Week 4 is insane.
Yeah, but Week 3, I mean, it kind of set the stage for the craziness that was Week 4. And Firebolt getting this win on Phantom Knight, I think it really did kind of clear the fog. You know what I mean? He had a rough opening couple of weeks, but he really started putting it back together here.
Definitely, and this left him in a really good position as well. Looking at the ranking score for Week 3 for Division 1, it left him in 5th place with 1 and 2 at +0, when the next person was Kenneth, the Neerdowell Nidokings, at 2 and 1 +4. And that really helped bring him up and separate him from 6th through 8th, which are all -9, -9, -10, 0 and 3 for the rest of the division.
Yeah, I mean, the differential is so tight in Division 1 that winning is good on its own, but Firebolt winning this with a 5-0 is actually huge, because getting that like +5 on your differential in a division where the difference between like the top differential and the bottom differential and like the people who are in contention for playoffs is like 8 or 9. You know, it's really, really close. I mean, shoot, it was like Claire's at +9, and this brought Firebolt to 0. Yeah. Which is like, I know that sounds like, but you know, that's Firebolt literally with a 1 and 2 record, right? A losing record at an even, like a completely dead 0 differential.
Definitely, and again, it really sets him up with being in 5th place, just beneath Kenneth, and IDM at a +7 as well. You know, there's really good opportunity and wiggle room for Firebolt from this position. It's 6th through 8th that are going to have a really hard time clawing their way back up if they have a chance to get into playoffs in the first place as well. It's really rough at that point.
Yeah, the playoffs. I mean, it's a scrap in Division 1 for playoffs. You gotta want it like real bad, because it's. I mean, even IDM and Scoots are gonna start sweating by Week 4. So it's you gotta grab your wins where you can. And luckily for Firebolt, you know, he was able to hold it together and edge out Phantom Knight here pretty convincingly, which he really needed to do that to get back on the path. But honestly, like, after the Firebolt match, it's got the rankings looking spicy. I think that if you take a look at the rankings right now, go ahead and throw them on the screen. Do your funny little animation.
Oh, yeah, all the...
Whoa! Rankings! Look at this new thing we innovated.
That's going to look awful. You stop that right now. Because you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to use all those sound effects you just used. It's going to be awful. Cell phones flying everywhere.
Cell phones flying everywhere, dude. Inside jokes. Double dip draft.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. Division 1. I mean, look at that. 3-0, 3-0, 3-0, 2-1, 1-2, 0-3-0, 3-0-3.
Yeah, what an insane, like, just, like, setup currently for how it's filling out for, you know, Division 1 right now. Again, like you said, we've had these huge teetering tops and these, like, really low lows of just, like, the 9, 8, 7, 4, and then you have 2 9s and a -10. At the bottom.
I mean, the difference between the two divisions is nuts because they tell very different stories. Division 1 is like there's a cluster of dominant people, but it's kind of large. You know, there's more than 4 people who are like directly in hot contention for the playoffs, and there's no one person where I'm looking at them and I'm like, oh yeah, there's 100% chance they're going on. Whereas obviously in Division 2, it's a bit more lopsided. Certainly at week 3. You know, the differentials gap is massive in Division 2, whereas in Division 1, they're all within 1 or 2 good wins of each other.
Definitely. Stay on Division 1 just real quick before we move on to Division 2 and talk about that. I wanted to bring up that I think it's really interesting because I feel like Division 1's a little unfairly balanced to a degree. We have a lot of newcomers. And, you know, with Haunted Magic, because Phantom Knight's new, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, as well as Mass. And, you know, you can see that in the rankings here as well. But, you know, you have Claire coming back after already knowing about Showdown and all this stuff. Sure, some of the new things are a little different. The new metas are not what they used to be. But Claire really showing her knowledge and how well she does in these types of games. Scoots, of course, being an amazing player as it is in second place. IDM being one of the best of the, like, Double Draft League itself. In third place, and Kenneth, who also does really well in fourth place. And I think that really defines how Season 1 is, but the really, you know, the people who've been doing this a while, who know Pokemon really well, are at the top of this one, where you have the newcomers at the bottom.
Yeah, well, it's hard, right? So there were 5 people, or rather 6, I think. There were 6.
There were 6.
There were 6 new introductions on this season, right? So the Maryland Manectrics, Haunted Mansion Gengars, Minneapolis Magnezones, Kansas City Krabbies, Hatchling and Aegis Slashers, and I think that's it. Okay, so there's only 5. Or no, Minneapolis Magnezones, of course.
Yeah.
So that's 6.
You reset
Did
Minneapolis
I?
Magnezones.
Okay, sorry. Look, I'm looking at it, right? So there's 5 people that were like new to the division, right? So 2 of the new teams, right? Hatchling, Age Slashers, Kansas City Krabbies are in Division 2. 3 of them are in Division 1, which is like as even a split, obviously, as you can get with 5 teams. I think if I was going to do the seeding differently, knowing what I know now, I would probably have either moved Claire or Mass over to Division 2.
That's fair.
I think that I think you're right, it is a bit like lopsided in Division 1 in hindsight. It's kind of hard because it's hard to predict where people will end up falling in terms of like their placement. Because some people will just make good upsets and some people will underperform. You know, obviously, like, I think it goes without saying that White Loaf is seated much higher than 8th place in his division. But he isn't performing to that standard, so it kind of affects the outcome of that division's matches. But in theory, this should have been a roughly even playing field.
Yeah, and it's something, too, to be completely fair. Look at what Levin did last season.
Right, yeah, it's hard to even predict how well anyone would do. I think my assumption was that Claire would have underperformed compared to how she's doing, and that White Loaf would have overperformed compared to how he's doing. And that obviously has tipped the balance of the placements here.
Definitely.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
And it kind of sucks, right? When you're on the bottom part of that division, you're thinking to yourself, like, why is IDM and Scoots and Claire and Kenneth all in my division? It's like, well, Kenneth's last season wasn't that strong, so he had to be put in kind of a middling seed. Claire, we couldn't have predicted her to do that well, so she had kind of a middling seed.
I mean, Fireball's also a really good player, too, from the
Yeah, he was considered
season,
one of the higher seeds. He was one of the higher seeds in that division. It was supposed to go, if I remember my seeding correctly, it was like IDM, Scoots, Firebolt, Chemith was the projected top 4.
Yeah.
And then it was going to be like Claire, and then Woody, and then Phantom Knight, then Mass in that division. That was kind of the projected like seeding. And I think that's a roughly, at least in terms of what my mentality was when... And it's not even just me that did the seeding, for the record. It was myself and Aurora both worked on it together. There was a lot of, like, you have to dig deep, because, you can look at Claire's, like, records from SSL and be like, damn, Claire's no slouch. Claire's good at the game. But it's also like, I know that Claire hasn't played this game in fucking years, And if you come back and you don't know what a Silvally is, then you're going to get worked by IDM. So it's, conversely, like, never knowing where I'm going to put, like, I had seeded Love and Sky so low last season, and he massively overperformed his seed just by grinding really hard and having, like, a good innate game sense.
Yeah.
So you can only really get your seeding, like, so accurate.
Definitely.
I do, though, agree that, like, in hindsight, Division 2 is a bit weaker than Division 1. Mm-hmm. And I'd probably move Claire into Division 2 if I were going to do it over. I would swap her with, like, either Jason or Vincent.
Yeah. And speaking of Division 2, should we move over and talk about the rankings over there on that side? I know we're in the league itself. Well, we're going to be on.
Sure. Yeah, this is the first week we're doing it. I would normally want to leave Division 2 ranking discussion to the Division 2 analysis, but I think that we can do it here since we're, like, it's something new that we're doing, so we might as well, like, do them both now.
Yeah, just because, we talked about it and we think it's a fair way to let you know how the season's actually looking, not just the matches themselves, but to wrap up the analysis of the matches of the week.
We already recorded
where everyone is.
We already recorded the other one too, so we can't like go back in time and amend this anything. So yeah, Division 2 as of week 3, basically myself and Aurora, right, Southtown Sand Slashers, Homesburg Hunters, were very high compared to everyone else, where they're kind of scrapping. Here's what's interesting, right? So in Division 1, it's like there's 5 people roughly that all have a pretty good shot at making playoffs, and they're all having to kind of muscle past each other, right? Mm-hmm. In Division 2, myself and Aurora, especially Aurora, have kind of pushed so far ahead of the pack that it is very unlikely that we don't move on to playoffs.
Yeah, it's yours to lose for playoffs, especially Aurora at week 3. However, with week 4 knowledge, it's Aurora, I'm certain is going to make playoffs at the rate things are going.
Yeah, there's pretty much no way she doesn't make playoffs. And
exactly.
Again, I also have like a really, really strong chance still, given my like differential in my record at this point.
Definitely.
But beyond that, like the 3rd and the 4th slots are the ones really in contention there, right? In Division 1, all 4 of the seeding slots, and the thing that you have to recognize about playoffs, like seeding and stuff, is like you might think, if you're one of the uninitiated, you might think that 4th is the same as 1st, right? You both go on to playoffs, so it's all even. There's no buys. That's not entirely true, because your seeding in group stage determines who you play round 1 of playoffs. So the better you do in your division, the theoretically easier first round you will have, because in playoffs, rank 1 will fight rank 4, and rank 2 will fight rank 3 from the opposing divisions, right? Mm-hmm. So if you were looking at the screen count that you gave me, right, if we were to cut, print, ship it, we're done, and this was going to be the playoffs set, it would be Claire versus Jason, Scoots versus Vincent, IDM versus me, and Chemith versus Aurora.
Oh, I just sent it earlier. Never mind.
Yeah, no, I already have it open.
Okay.
That would be how it is. So you want to play for a better seed, because if I'm hearing that, I'm like, shit, I don't want to fight IDM round 1, so I need to keep winning even if I'm already in playoffs contention, because I need to get a better seed so that I don't immediately get waxed in playoffs.
Yeah.
That is an interesting kind of dilemma to be in, right? Because in Division 2, 3rd and 4th seed are still, like, hotly contested all the way down to basically 7th place.
Yeah, definitely. Because, we have a +4, -1, -4, -5, -9, and -13 for the current respective...
as of week 3, yeah.
Yeah, as of week 3.
So the problem is, right, like, it's tough, but it's possible for literally anyone in the competition still by week 3 to get into playoffs, right? If you win the next 4 of your matches, you're going to look fairly solid for playoffs. But you start to kind of see some people's differential starts to really bubble up high, some people starts to fall really low, and it's really like the difference between, for example, like you and Vincent, right? Hatchling Aegislashers and Hairlin Haluchas.
Yeah.
The differential is not that steep. I mean, it's a 13 difference, I believe, or yeah, it's a 13 difference, which is like a lot. But that's that's like you can make that up fairly easily if you just have a couple of good games over the rest of your season.
Or I mean, Hurling Haluchas, if they choke on a
right, yeah, or if Vincent just totally tanks it, and you could find yourself feasibly landing in that 3rd seed spot all the way from 7th place. Whereas it is not like that in Division 1. There's really only 5 people in contention.
Yeah, there's still a chance, but with how previous records are and current lineups are, it's not looking to be the case for Division 1, more so than like with Division 2 and how it's all lining up over there.
Right. So yeah, in Division 2, it's kind of like the very top cluster is kind of fighting for seed, and then everyone else is fighting for the remaining 2 slots, whereas in Division 1, it's an all-out brawl. Everyone's trying to just claw whatever they can possibly get from their matches, because the differential is so thin, right? The difference between scores is razor thin, and anyone could wind up at number 1 still. So that's kind of the difference in the divisions, really, in terms of how it's played out.
Definitely, and what a week 3 was, but you'll all have to stay tuned for week 4.
Stay tuned. Week 4, it'll knock your socks off. Week 4 was insane.
Yeah. And I think week 4, I think, is the defining week for how the rest of the season's gonna look.
Yeah, well, that's the middle week, right? So it's a 7-week season for the regular division stage. Week 4 puts you squarely in the middle of the tournament, and that is kind of like some people's make or break, like do or die week. And you'll see some people do, and some people die in week 4. I'll tell you that.
Anything else we want to slap on at the end here and talk about?
I think we've pretty much covered it. I think that's that's the games, that's the rankings. Definitely stay tuned for the replays should be coming soon, and then you'll see next week's analysis going up hopefully relatively soon, because then we'll be back on track by week 5, and hopefully we can ride it out through the rest of the division. Getting
those
these out
delays
on
we had around New Year's were a little much.
Yeah, really. The Christmas and New Year's delays were a ton. I suppose it was to be expected given that it was like a holiday season, and I mean, but Aurora landing in the hospital made it way harder too, and it was just it was just a whole thing.
Aurora landing in hospital and still out on top with plus 15.
Yeah, did not put a dent in her stride. She had fucking IV drips in both arms, clicking on things on Pokemon Showdown, and still winning her matches. So.
Got her priorities.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I think that's it. I also wanted to give you actually a special thanks, Cabral. Thank you for editing all this stuff. People have been enjoying it a lot, and I'm happy to have you on.
It's been a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on, by the way. Super fun to talk about things that I barely understand.
Sure, it might be a little high concept, but I think we did good.
I mean, slightly, but like I'm starting to pick it up. I'm starting to get it. As the weeks progress and go on and everything, it's been fun being part of a double draft and just understanding what goes into it and what it's all about. Finally.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us. As always, my name is Spood, coach of the Southtown Sandslashers,
and I'm Cabral of the Hatchling Aegislashers.
And we would like to thank you so very much for watching our Division 1 Week 3 recap. Please stay tuned for Week 4. In the meantime, adios and good luck.
Adios.